A list is one of the data types that we will be using very frequently. It is simply a list of comma-separated items, comma-separated values, surrounded by square braces. Typically, when you consider a list, the items might be values of the same type. They might be all integers, they might be all real numbers, all strings, but it doesn't have to be the case. We can have lists where each item has a different type. For example, here we have a list variable. We know this because the value is surrounded by square braces. And there are 3 commas here, 1, 2, and 3, which means that we have 4 items in this list. This is the first item, separated from the second item by a comma, separated from the third item by another comma, and we have the fourth item here at the end. As you can see here, the first item is a string. It is the string physics. The second item is also a string, chemistry. The third item is a number, an integer. And the fourth item is also an integer. So we can have lists where each item has a different type. And this is another example of a list, and it has 5 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, it happens to be that every item has the same type of integer, and that's also okay. So we can have lists having different types of elements, and we can have lists with the same type of elements. That's possible. Here you can see all the operators, all the features that we have mentioned about strings, and you can also use all of them on lists as well, because a list is also a sequence just like a string. We can check if an item is in a list or if it is not in a list. We can append 2 lists using the addition operator, or we can repeat a list by multiplying it with an integer to indicate the number of repetitions. We can refer to a particular item by giving the index. We can take a part of a list, and we can take a part of a list by jumping over by some constant. We can get the length of the list. We can get the minimum or maximum items of a list as well. Okay, let's see some examples on these operations. Let's say that we have this list named MyList, which has the elements 1, 20, 30, 2, 5, and 61. So this is a list with 6 elements, and it happens to be here that all the elements are integers. We can refer to a particular item in the list by writing the index of that item within square braces. For example, if we write 0 here, we will get the first item of this list, which sits in index 0. We said that the indices start from 0, so the first index is 0, and if we refer to this first index 0, we will get the first item that we have in this list from the beginning. As another example, if we type 3 within the square braces, then we will get 2 in the output. So this is index 0, this is index 1, index 2, at index 3 we have 2. As we mentioned before, we can use the indices from right to left in the reverse direction. So for example, within the square braces, we can type -1. This -1 means the very last item in the list. So it will give us 61 in the output. As another example, if we type -3, then we will get 2 again, because this is -1, -2, and at index -3, we have 2 as the value. As it was the case with the strings, if we type an invalid index between the square braces, for example 12, then we will get an error. So this is the out of range error. And it is the same in the reverse direction as well. So if we type -7, for example, we will again get an error, because the last valid index of this list is -6 when we go in the reverse direction. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. When we type -7, we get the out of range error. So we have 3 things to remember actually. The first thing to remember is that the first index is 0. Those indices start from 0. The second thing to remember is that if we go from right to left, if we go in the reverse direction, then we start from index -1. And the third thing to remember is that we use square braces to refer to a particular item in a list and write the index of the item to be returned within these square braces. We can also take a slice of a list or a part of a list. So let's print our list variable and continue with just taking portions of the list. So for example, let's say that I can write I would like to get the part of the list starting from index 2 going all the way up to index 4, but the stopping index is excluded. So the notation we have here is that we will type a starting index and then will come a colon and then we will type the stopping index. This is not the last index but the stopping index, so it will be excluded. So if we take a slice of my list from index 2 to index 4, we start from index 2 and go all the way up to index 4, but we exclude the item that sits in index 4. So we just consider the indices 2 and 3 in this case. At index 2 we have 30, at index 3 we have 2, and that's all for the sublist to be returned by this single code line. We can also use negative indices in this notation as well. For example, if we write my list starting from -5 to -2, so it starts from index -5, which is this one, and it will go all the way up to index -2, excluding the value that sits in index 2, of course. So in the end, we will consider the indices -5, -4, and -3, which gives us this list, 20, 30, and 2. So these indices, the starting index and the stopping index, are actually optional, which means that we can skip them. For example, we can skip writing this starting index and only mention a stopping index. In this case, it will start from the very beginning and go until index 5 by excluding the value that we have at index 5. So it starts from the very beginning. We didn't mention a starting point, but by default it starts from index 0. So we have the value at index 0, we have the value at index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, but the value at index 5 is excluded. We can also skip the stopping value. For example, I can say I would like to start from 2, but I don't want to refer to any particular index for the stopping value. So in such a case, it will start at index 2 and go all the way up to the end of the list. We get the items of the list that starts from this index and continue till the last index. And this time, the value at the last index is included in the value returned. We can of course skip both of the stopping and starting indices, and that will give us a copy of the entire list. So we didn't mention a starting index, which means that it will start from the beginning of the list, and we didn't mention a stopping index, which means that it will go all the way to the end of the list. So we get the entire list in the output. We can also use the negative indices in this notation as well. So for example, if we write a statement like this one, the starting index is -2, which means that we will start from the item that sits next to the very last item. And because of the fact that we didn't give a stopping value, it will go all the way to the end. So we will see a list that consists of these values, 5 and 61 in the output. Likewise, we can also have a statement where we skip the starting index but type a negative stopping index. So it will start from the very beginning, because we don't mention a starting index, and it will go all the way up to index -2, but it excludes the item that we have at index 2. So this was our list. It starts from the very beginning, so this is index -2. If we start from the very beginning and go till the index -2, then it means that we will get this part of the list. So now we have another thing to remember. If we would like to take a slice of a list, Then we give a starting index and a stopping index. This is not the last index, but the stopping index. And we put a column between these two indices that we are writing within the square braces. So we have one final notation on these slicing operations. Let's print the value of our mylist variable one more time. Okay, now we can also take a slice of a list with a step size. For example, if I type something like this, here we have 2 columns and 3 values. The first 2 values are the same as before, which means that the first value is the starting index and the second value is the stopping index. So for this example, we start from index 1 and we go all the way up to index 5, of course excluding the value that we have at index 5. That's still the same. And this last value that we have here gives us the step size. How many items we will move, each item we consider the next time. So here it says that we will move 2 by 2. We will take the element at index 1 and then we will consider not the index 2 but the index 3. So we skip index 2 and we jump to index 3. So from index 1 we jump to index 3 and from index 3 we jump to index 5. But here 5 is the stopping index, so we cannot have the value that sits in index 5, which means that in this example only the indices 1 and 3 will be considered and we will get these 2 items, 20 that sits in index 1 and 2 that sits in index 3. So you should always remember that the stopping index is exclusive, it's not inclusive. And we can use negative indices to start counting from the right. And then we have different notations for taking different slices. Apart from the slicing operators, we also have some other operators or function calls that we can use with lists. For example, we can use this len function by passing the list variable as parameter to get the number of elements that we have in this particular list. Or we can use the min function to get the minimum element that we have in this list. And likewise, the max function will return us the maximum element of this list. Apart from these 3 functions, we can also use the addition and multiplication operators on list variables. For example, let's say that we have a list variable, list1, having these values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's also say that we have another list variable, list2, having the values 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now we can use the addition operator to append these 2 list values. If we type list1 plus list2, then list2 will be appended at the end of list1. So this is a concatenation operation. We can also use the multiplication operator on a list variable, but we can only use the multiplication operator with one of the operands being a list and the other being an integer. For example, if I multiply this list1 with 3, then I will get the repetition of this list 3 times in the output. So this is the first repetition, this is the second repetition, and this is the third repetition. So these are the 2 valid arithmetic operator calls on list values. But we cannot subtract a list from another list, so this is not valid. We will get an error. Or we cannot multiply a list with another list. This is also not valid. And the division operator on lists is also not valid. As with strings, there are also some methods associated with lists as well. Since those are different types of objects, their methods are also different. In this table, you can see a list of methods that we can use with the sequence type list. For example, let's say that we have this list X, which is initialized to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can add a new value at the end of this list by using the append method. So I'll type the name of the object, put the dot, and then call the append method. And within the parentheses of this method call, I will be typing the number or the value that I would like to append to the end of this list. For example, if I type 6, then the value 6 will be added as the last item of this list. So if we print the value of x, we will now see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the output. We can also insert an item to a particular index of the list. So this time we will use the insert method. This method takes two parameters, one for the index and one for the item to be inserted. So let's say that at index 3, I would like to insert 0. So this is index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2, this is index 3. So if we execute this piece of code and print the value of this variable, now we will see that at this particular index we have 0 and all the items that we have are shifted towards right. So this insert method call inserts the value 0 to index 3. As we can add items to a particular list, we can also remove items from a list. For example, if we use the pop method without specifying any parameters, then it will remove the last item occurring in this list and return the value of that item to us. So when we execute this code line, we will see 6 in the output because this is the last item that we have, and the item removed will be returned by this method call. And if we print the value of x, we will see that there is no 6 anymore as the last item. So it has been removed. This pop method can also be used by providing an index as well. So for example, if I type 3 as the index, then it will remove the item at index 3 of this list. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3. At index 3, we had 0. So when we call the pop method on the object x with the parameter being 3, it will remove the item at index 3 and return the value of that item back to us. So we see 0 in the output. But if we would like to print the entire list, we will see that the 0 is gone from the list. This pop method enables us to remove an item from the list by providing an index, or if we don't provide an index, it will remove the last item. There is also another method that we can use to remove some values from the list, but this time we will not be referring to an index, but we will just be giving the value to be removed. So the name of this method is remove. X is the object, dot remove is the method, and as the parameter to this remove method call, we will type the value to be removed from this list. So for example, if I enter 4, then it will just remove the item with value 4 from this list. So if we print the value of this list, we will see that 4 is gone. We only have 1, 2, 3, and 5. With the remove method, we should be careful about the fact that it only removes the first occurrence of the value given as its parameter. For example, let's say that our list consists of these values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4. This is our list now. And if we call the remove method with the parameter being 4, it will remove only the first occurrence of 4, this one. And let's also have the print statement after the remove operation. So as you see, after 4 is removed from this list, we have this list. So the first 4 is gone, but we still have this last 4 in our list. So it's important that the remove method removes only the first occurrence of the given value. If you would like to remove all the items of the list, then you can use the clear method. This method doesn't require any parameters and it also doesn't return any values. It simply clears the list. So if you print x, you will see an empty list in the output. Let's say that this is our list again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. We can count the number of occurrences of a particular item from a list. So the object is x, and then I will put the dot, and the method call for this is count. So as the parameter, I will type the value for which I would like to get the count. For example, if I type 2, it will return me 1 because there is only a single 2 in this list. But if I pass 4 as parameter, then I will get 2 in the output because there are 2 4s in this list. What else we can do is that we can find the index of a particular item within a list, and the name of this method call is index. So x.index, and I will type a value from this list. For example, if I type 4, it will return me the first occurrence of the value 4 in this list. So the first occurrence is here, which has the index 0, 1, 2, 3. So this will give me 3 in the output. If there are multiple occurrences of a particular item for which that you would like to get the index, you will only get the index of the first occurrence of this value. And if you pass an invalid index when calling this method, then you will get an error. To be on the safe side, before using the index method, we can actually guard this operation so that we will not be ending in this kind of an error. And for this purpose, we can use an if statement. For example, we can say that if 10 in x, now it's safe to call the index method, because if 10 is not in x, then the statement that we will type here will not be executed. So I can have a print statement here in which I will call the index method on x with the parameter being 10. So if there is this value in x, then the method call will be executed safely. Otherwise, if there is no 10s in x, then this print statement will not be executed, so we will not be getting any errors. So in the else part, maybe we would like to have a print statement that states not appearing. So since we don't have 10 in this list here, we will see not appearing in the output. But for example, instead of 10, let's actually not type a particular value, but let's say we have this variable a. If a is 10, it will check if 10 is in x, and since this is false, we will go with this print statement. But let's say if a is 5, then this will be true because we have 5 in our list. So since this is true, the print statement will be executed and we will get the index of 5 from this list, which is 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are two other versions of the index method, but before checking them, let's actually print the value of x so that we won't be scrolling up. Okay, so we have this list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4, and we would like to call the index method to see the index of 4, but I can also say that I would like to find the index of 4 starting at index 5, which means that it will just start searching for the value 5 starting from index 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So from this point, it will search for 4, and so we will get 5 in the output. Also, we can specify a stopping index for the search operation. For example, let's say that I would like to search for the value 3, and I would like to start the search at index 1 and then stop it at index 3, for example. So it will search the value 3 within this part of the list. And we get 2 because the item that we have as 3 sits at index 2, 0, 1, 2. And one more thing that I would like to show as the methods of the list is the reverse method. So let's say that I have this list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I call the reverse method, it will reverse the list inline. So this method call does not return a value, but it just performs the reverse operation on the object itself. So if I print x after this method call, you will see that the order of the items that we have in this list are being reversed.